The moment he checked his wallet for the third time, his fingers trembled. Not because he didn't know what was inside, but because he wished, just for a second, that reality would change if he looked again. $50. That was everything Jacob had. The restaurant lights were warm, golden, almost mocking in how softly they touched everything. Polished tables, crystal glasses, couples laughing like money didn't matter. But to Jacob, every flicker of light felt like pressure tightening around his chest. What if you were sitting there trying to pretend you belonged, knowing one wrong choice on the menu could cost you everything? Would you stay or would you walk out before anyone noticed? He had almost walked out. But then he remembered Noah, his 6-year-old son, asleep at home with a neighbor babysitting for the first time in months. Noah had smiled earlier that evening, tugging at Jacob's worn sleeve, saying he hoped Dad would have a nice dinner and maybe make a friend. That innocent hope was the only reason Jacob stayed seated. Across the table sat Rachel, kind eyes, soft voice, someone who clearly didn't belong in the same financial storm Jacob was drowning in. She wasn't dressed extravagantly, but there was a quiet confidence about her, the kind that came from stability, not struggle. She spoke gently, asking about his life, and Jacob answered carefully, trimming away the harsh edges of truth. He didn't mention the eviction notice from last winter, or the nights he skipped meals so Noah wouldn't have to. At the next table, unnoticed by Jacob, sat a man in a tailored suit, Michael. He wasn't just any man. He was a self-made millionaire CEO, someone who had built an empire from nothing. But tonight, he wasn't thinking about business. His attention had shifted, slowly, toward Jacob. Michael had seen that look before. The way Jacob studied the menu a little too long. The way his thumb rubbed the edge of his wallet beneath the table. The way he smiled, but only with effort. It was a look Michael had worn years ago, back when he had nothing but ambition and a fear of failure so loud it kept him awake at night. Rachel eventually excused herself briefly, leaving Jacob alone with the menu and his thoughts. The numbers blurred in front of him. $28 for a steak, $16 for pasta, $8 for a salad that wouldn't even fill him up. $50 suddenly felt like nothing. He leaned back, swallowing hard, staring at the ceiling as if answers might be written there. What would you do? Order something cheap and risk looking small? Or try to impress someone you barely knew, knowing it might cost you your last dollar? He chose honesty, at least in his own quiet way. When the waiter came, Jacob ordered the simplest dish on the menu and a glass of water. His voice didn't shake, but his pride did. Michael watched all of it. He watched the restraint, the quiet calculation, the dignity Jacob tried so hard to hold on to. And something inside him stirred. Not pity, but recognition. Rachel returned, smiling, unaware of the silent battle that had just taken place. The conversation picked up again, soft and easy. She laughed at Jacob's stories, the ones he could afford to tell, and for a moment the weight on his shoulders eased. But then the bill came. It was subtle, almost invisible to anyone not paying attention, but Michael saw the exact moment Jacob's heart sank. The total was just over what he had expected. Not by much, but enough. Jacob hesitated. He reached for his wallet slowly, his fingers tightening as if bracing for impact. His mind raced. Should he pretend his card didn't work? Should he excuse himself? Should he confess? Before he could decide, the waiter quietly returned with a soft smile and a simple sentence that changed everything. The gentleman at the next table has already taken care of your bill. Jacob froze. Rachel blinked in surprise, looking around, and that's when Jacob turned his head slightly and met Michael's gaze for the first time. There was no arrogance there, no show of wealth, just a calm, understanding nod, as if to say, "I've been where you are." Jacob stood up, almost instinctively, walking over. His pride fought him with every step, but gratitude pushed him forward. Michael didn't let him speak first. He simply said softly that sometimes life doesn't give you enough, but that doesn't mean you stop showing up. He told Jacob that tonight wasn't about charity, it was about respect. Respect for a man who still tried, even when the odds were stacked against him. Jacob didn't know what to say. No words felt big enough. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Rachel looked at him differently now, not with pity but with something deeper, understanding maybe, or admiration. For the first time Jacob didn't feel small, but the story didn't end there. A week later, Jacob received a call. Michael had found him, not through luck but intention. He offered Jacob a job, not out of sympathy but because he had seen something rare that night: resilience. The job wasn't glamorous at first, long hours, modest pay, but it was a beginning, and Jacob took it. Months passed. Life didn't magically become easy, but it became possible. Bills were paid. Noah had new shoes. The constant weight on Jacob's chest began to lift little by little. And one evening, sitting at the same restaurant months later, Jacob realized something. That night had never really been about the money. It had been about being seen, being understood in a moment when he felt invisible. What if someone had never noticed him? What if Michael had looked away like everyone else often did? Would Jacob have given up just a little more that night? Years later, Jacob would still think about that dinner, not because of the bill, but because of the moment someone chose kindness over indifference. Before this story ends, take a second and ask yourself, have you ever been in a moment like that where one small act of kindness could change everything? If yes, share it in the comments. Your story might remind someone else they're not alone. Jacob eventually became more than just an employee. He grew, learned, and built a life he once thought was impossible. But no matter how far he came, he never forgot the feeling of holding $50 and wondering if it was enough. And maybe that's the point. Sometimes it's not. But sometimes someone steps in and makes it enough. If this story touched your heart even a little, consider liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. Only if you truly felt something real here.